Few anime balance philosophical depth, emotional storytelling, and world building as elegantly as Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. At its heart, this series is about the human condition, our pursuit of knowledge, our fear of loss, and our longing for meaning. In the first part of this video, we'll explore how Brotherhood constructs its world, introduces its core themes, and frames the journey of Edward and Alphonse as both an epic adventure and an intimate story about grief, morality, and responsibility. The iconic principle of equivalent exchange, to obtain something of equal value must be lost, functions on multiple levels. First, as a literal rule of alchemy, it grounds the magic system in a kind of rational logic. But thematically, it represents humanity's constant negotiation with limits. For Ed and Al, their failed transmutation of their mother is the ultimate lesson. Some things cannot be measured or regained. This principle feels empowering at first, offering a clear way to navigate life. But the series gradually reveals its limitations. Equivalent exchange is not the final truth. It is a useful framework, but one that cannot fully encapsulate human complexity. The brothers' mutilated bodies serves as a permanent reminder of their failure and hubris. Unlike many shonen protagonists, their power-up comes at the cost of irreversible scars. Alphonse's missing body and Edward's prosthetic limbs are not just physical states, they're emotional and philosophical burdens. The story keeps returning to the consequences of their mistake, emphasizing that actions have lasting repercussions. This makes their quest for the Philosopher's Stone not only a search for power, but also an existential journey toward atonement and acceptance. When the brothers discover that Philosopher's Stones are made from human lives, the narrative pivots into a meditation on sacrifice and ethics. Edward's uncompromising refusal to use the stone, even at the cost of his own goals, sets him apart from the protagonists who justify atrocities for the greater good. This refusal becomes a moral compass for the series. Unlike the villains, Edward insists on finding another way, highlighting one of the show's core assertions that true strength is not about shortcuts or domination, but about enduring hardships without sacrificing your humanity. The homunculi embody humanity's vices: pride, greed, wrath, envy, sloth, gluttony, and lust. Each villain literalizes a fragment of human weakness, but they are not one-dimensional. Characters like greed reveal the complexity of desire, showing that even sin itself contains the potential for change. Through the homunculi, the narrative externalizes inner flaws, creating antagonists that are not only obstacles but also mirrors. They force Edward and Alphonse and others to confront the dark aspects of themselves. Amidst all the political intrigue and philosophical weight, Brotherhood is first and foremost a story about two brothers. Edward's guilt and Alphonse's yearning for embodiment form the emotional axis around which the story spins. Their relationship is tender, stubborn, and fiercely protective. It humanizes the largest stakes of the series. Without their bond, the show risks collapsing into abstract morality. With it, every ethical dilemma becomes grounded in love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Edward begins the series brash and confident, a boy prodigy who believes intellect and skill can overcome any obstacle. His arrogance is quickly shattered by the consequences of attempting human transmutation, an act that cost him his limbs and Alphonse his body. In his early journey, Edward's identity is tethered to guilt. Everything he does is an effort to restore Alphonse and to make up for his failure. But as the narrative unfolds, Edward's growth becomes less about fixing his mistake and more about rethinking the values by which he lives. A key turning point is Edward's rejection of the Philosopher's Stone. He refuses to take an easier path if it means sacrificing others, and this moral stance defines him more than his alchemy. Later, when he fights Father, Edward doesn't win because he is stronger. He wins because he's willing to let go of alchemy itself. The choice to give up alchemy for Alphonse's life is not defeat, it is his greatest victory. By surrendering power, Edward embraces vulnerability, proving that his humanity, not his alchemy, defines him. His arc is both a testament to his humility and selflessness. Then it's Alphonse. Alphonse's plight is one of the most tragic elements of Brotherhood. Bound to a suit of armor, he cannot eat, feel, or even touch, existing in a state of liminality. Despite this, Alphonse exudes warmth and compassion, often serving as the emotional anchor for Edward. Where Edward embodies determination and stubbornness, Alphonse symbolizes patience and empathy. His struggle with identity, wondering if he's even real or just a construct of Edward's memory, creates some of the series' most poignant moments. His willingness to sacrifice his own existence for Edward near the end encapsulates his arc. Alphonse's love is not conditional on regaining his body, but on ensuring his brother's survival. His ultimate restoration at the end is not just physical, it is symbolic of his unwavering faith that humanity, love, and sacrifice can triumph over despair. Roy Mustang represents ambition tempered by guilt. As a state alchemist who directly participated into the Ishvalan genocide, Mustang is burdened with the blood of innocence. His goal of becoming Führer is not fueled by vanity, but by a deep desire to reform Amistris and ensure that such atrocities never happen again. His arc forces him to wrestle with justice. Can a man who has committed such crimes ever lead with integrity? The death of Hughes tempts Mustang towards vengeance, pushing him towards the abyss to become the very thing he despises. In his near execution of envy, the series illustrates the danger of losing oneself to hatred. It is Hawkeye, his trusted companion, who reminds him of his humanity, stopping him from descending into revenge. This interdependence underlines Brotherhood's core message. Morality and strength are not individual burdens, but rather a collective responsibility. Mustang's eventual rise to power, scarred but wiser, symbolizes the potential for flawed humans to strive towards justice without denying their sins. Then there's Scar. Scar is initially framed as a ruthless killer, a vigilante consumed by vengeance for the slaughter of his people. He embodies the cycle of hatred, striking down state alchemists as retribution. Yet, Scar's arc is perhaps the most powerful transformation in the series. Through interaction with Edward, Winry, and others, Scar learns that vengeance cannot heal wounds, it only deepens them. When Scar chooses to ally with former enemies to overthrow Father, his journey becomes full circle. He transforms from a destroyer to protector, finding purpose not in destruction, but in rebuilding. Scar's arc demonstrates that reconciliation is possible, not by erasing the past, but by acknowledging it and channeling it, grief into justice. His redemption is a powerful reminder that even those consumed by hate can find healing in the future. The homunculi function as personifications of the 7 deadly sins, each serving as both antagonist and allegory. Lust embodies desire, gluttony, the avoided consumption, envy, the pettiness of comparison, wrath, the destructive force of unchecked power, sloth, the danger of apathy, pride, the blindness of arrogance and greed, the insatiable hunger for more. Their arcs, however, reveal nuance. Greed becomes one of the most compelling figures by rebelling against Father and ultimately bonding with Ling Yao. His redefinition of greed, not as selfish desire, but as the desire to protect what one values, demonstrates that even flaws can be reimagined as strengths. In contrast, Pride's downfall as he reverts to a helpless child shows the hollowness of unchecked arrogance. Through the homunculi, Brotherhood conveys that human flaws are inescapable, but they're also redeemable when acknowledged and transformed. At the center of Brotherhood's conflict is Father, the homunculus who sought to shed all weakness and become godlike. His rejection of humanity's limitations drive him to consume souls and seek perfection. Yet, his downfall mirrors the very philosophy he tries to escape. In attempting to become more than human, he becomes less than human, empty, disconnected, and unfulfilled. The climactic confrontation with truth reinforces the series' ultimate message. Truth is not a deity, but rather a mirror, reflecting the reality of one's choices. When Edward sacrifices his alchemy for Alphonse's life, he demonstrates the final rejection of power as identity. His victory lies in his willingness to embrace imperfection, to accept that being human, with all its flaws and limitations, is simply enough. The resolution of Father's defeat and Edward's choice encapsulates Brotherhood's humanistic core. Alchemy in Brotherhood is more than a fantastical science. It is a metaphor for human striving. The transmutation circles, the laws of exchange, and the boundaries of possibility mirror our own relationship with knowledge and creation. Alchemy represents the human desire to understand, to control, and to surpass limits. But the story reminds us that all creation comes with responsibility. That failed transmutation of Edward and Alphonse is not just a plot device, it is a symbol of human arrogance, the consequences of ignoring boundaries, and the humility required to accept them. One of the most enduring symbols in the series is the Gate of Truth. Each alchemist, who attempts forbidden acts encounters Aryan Gate, guarded by a faceless being simply called Truth. Now, Truth is not a god, not a demon, but a reflection of self, the embodiment of the consequences of desire. When Edward and Alphonse are pulled before Truth, they are confronted not by punishment from an external deity, but by the reality of their choices. The gate represents the inner mirror, the unavoidable confrontation with one's actions. In this way, Brotherhood uses the spiritual imagery not to enforce dogma, but to emphasize personal accountability. The story is steeped in biblical echoes, particularly the narrative of the fall. Father, originating as a creature born of experimentation, mirrors the archetype of Lucifer, seeking to rival God, desiring perfection, and ultimately falling into ruin because of pride. His quest for godhood echoes the Tower of Babel, humanity's attempt to reach the divine through ambition, only to collapse under the weight of hubris. These religious motifs underscore a recurring truth. The attempt to deny human limitations is not transcendence, but rather downfall. Amistris is a world defined by the tension between science and belief. Alchemy appears to offer mastery over nature, yet its limits reveal unanswered questions that point toward mystery and transcendence. Characters like Hohenheim embody this duality, a man who carries the knowledge of centuries, yet who recognizes the futility of escaping mortality. The Ishvalan people, with their spiritual traditions, serve as a foil to Amistris' obsession with scientific progress. Their faith, rooted in reverence for life and humility before the divine, contrasts with the hubris of the state. Through these contrasts, Brotherhood refuses to pit science against faith simplistically. Instead, it represents them as contemporary ways of grappling with existence, one seeking to know and the other seeking to accept. Circular imagery pervades Brotherhood. Transmutation circles, the nationwide alchemy circle, and the Ouroboros tattoo of the Homunculi. These circles are a symbol of eternity, of cycles that cannot be escaped, and a wholeness that cannot be redefined. Father attempts to impose a circle that consumes humanity, binding all life to his will. But Edward and Alphonse and their allies break that circle, redefining the circle as a symbol of community, of shared struggle and connection. In this way, the circle becomes a metaphor for choice, either an endless loop of repetition or domination, or a loop of compassion and renewal. All of these symbols converge in the closing message of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. The story argues that transcendence does not lie in surpassing humanity, but rather in embracing it. The gate, the truth, the circle, and the religious echoes all reinforce the same point. Imperfection is not failure, it is identity. Edward's final rejection of alchemy in favor of family and love demonstrates a triumph of humanity over ambition. It is not the stone, the state, or the science that defines worth. It is the willingness to be vulnerable, to connect, and to live within limits that make life meaningful. With its blend of philosophy, character, and symbolism, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood endures as one of anime's most profound works. Its alchemical system reflects the human drive for knowledge, its religious motifs, caution against hubris, and its characters embody the messy, beautiful struggle of being human. Through circles, gates, and truths, the series crafts a tapestry that insists on one simple yet radical claim: to be human is to be enough.